Growing up in Cedarwood Falls, my life unfolded like a faded watercolor painting, smudged and dulled by the vibrant hues of my siblings' existence. The sun seemed to shine just a little brighter on their world, while I lingered in the shadows, a mere footnote in every grand tale told at the dinner table. My birthdays, those supposed celebrations of life, were nothing but whispers against the roaring applause of my siblings' extravagant festivities. One year, they received a shiny new bicycle, custom painted in candy colors, while I unwrapped a box containing nothing more than a pencil set, the kind they gave away free at school events. I remember sitting there, the taste of stale birthday cake in my mouth, feeling like a ghost at my own celebration. "Look, Mom, it's so cool!" they exclaimed, demanding everyone's attention, the excitement bubbling over. The adults gathered around them, laughter pouring in like sunlight. Meanwhile, I stood in the corner, clutching my pencil set like it was the most precious treasure, wishing I could be part of the laughter instead of just listening to it. "You should be more grateful for what you have," my mother chuckled, as if my small gift were somehow a sign of my own greatness just waiting to be uncovered. I could not help but wonder, was it so wrong to want just a little bit of the attention, a sliver of the joy that seemed to rain down on them like confetti? Nobody should have to pave their own way without the tools, I thought, a thought I buried so deep I almost forgot it existed. Too many times I shrugged those feelings off, convincing myself that my day would come, that I just had to be patient. But with every passing birthday, my existence felt more and more like a forgotten afterthought, a fable without an ending. I often thought about how many stories I missed telling, adventures I felt no part of. And then came the unthinkable, our parents' sudden passing. Everything changed. The house felt larger, the shadows darker. My corner, which I used to think of as a sanctuary, turned into a cave of despair, the air thick with unspoken grief. I stood beside my sibling at the tiny wooden table where we had shared countless meals, staring blankly at the faded wallpaper as the sense of loss enveloped us. "Can you believe they are gone?" I whispered, breaking the silence, the sound of my voice echoing like a distant thunder on a summer afternoon. My sibling turned, wearing that mask of composure, the one they perfected over the years. "It is hard," they replied, their voice steady, as if made of steel. I watched them rummage through our parents' belongings, choosing which memories to keep and which to toss aside. Yet among the weeping and heartache, I found something more destructive, the reality that the inheritance meant for both of us, a grand total of $150,000, now lay firmly in their hands, locked inside their selfish grip. I stumbled upon that devastating truth one evening, buried under paperwork that smelled of dust and the memories of our fleeting childhood. "What are you doing?" they snapped when they caught me hunched over a pile of documents. I hardly even recognized the tone, sharp as glass and cold as winter, but I couldn't ignore the pile of coiled hatred and resentment that stirred within me. "Just trying to understand," I replied, my voice no stronger than a whisper of wind. "Understand what? That you are not entitled to anything? You were always the sidekick, remember?" I swallowed hard, the bitter taste of truth choking me. The words cut deeper than I thought likely, opening old wounds I had spent years trying to bandage. "You always had more, yet you take this too, don't you?" I murmured, a shiver trickling down my spine like ice water. "That money is mine. You're not going to get a nickel from me," they responded, crossing their arms defiantly, an immovable wall. My heart raced, a caged bird trying desperately to break free. "But it was for both of us," I pleaded, desperation glowing in my eyes. "You can't just keep it all." "I can, and I will," they said, a cruel smile creeping across their lips as if mocking my plight. "You need to learn to accept that life is unfair." With those chilling words, they left the room, the door swinging shut with such finality I thought it might shatter the silence around me. Weeks passed after that confrontation. The air inside our home grew heavy with resentment. I could feel the weight of borrowed dreams pressing down on me as I tried to wrap my head around the betrayal, this mockery of my struggles in life. I felt sick every time I saw their smiling face at the breakfast table, too cheery, too bright while I picked at my food, a hollow shell of who I used to be. The more they flourished, the more I withered. I attempted to talk to them again, desperate to make them understand. "Why are you doing this? We could do something good with that money. We could help each other," I pleaded one afternoon, my voice wavering like a candle in the wind. Yet their laughter rang through the air like shattered glass, cold and cutting. "Help? You don't even know what to do with your own life, do you? You're a burden just like you always have been." That word stung like a hornet's venom, creating a rift wider than any bridge I could imagine crossing. Why had it always been this way? I sat alone in my room, surrounded by the remnants of my past, the pile of second-hand books gathering dust on the shelf. The cover of one, an old collection of fairy tales, caught my eye. The stories had always been filled with daring heroes and villains, tales of revenge, justice, and love. The idea of crafting my narrative began to take root within me. I thought about how every villain believed they were justified in their actions, how, time and again, they ended up clawing their way back to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. As the thought enveloped me, my resolve hardened. I began to plot beneath the veneer of weariness. The next time we sat at the table, I would confront them with my research, evidence I had uncovered that could overturn the balance of our inheritance. I would show them the documents, the alternatives they had kept hidden. The will had always stated that the assets were to be shared equally, despite their claims. Can they really do this? I thought, the question echoing in my mind over and over. Could I take action? I imagined confronting them boldly, not as a sidekick, but as a sister determined to reclaim her share of the story. Each day passed, tantalizing those thoughts like a dessert just out of reach. I envisioned our talks, my fingers sorting through the pages of papers, feeling powerful, no longer a shadow. I could feel the tides begin to turn. All the years of being overlooked, the laughter, the mockery, they began to crystallize in my mind like droplets of water, first falling slowly, then gaining momentum until they became a fierce storm. Justice, I whispered into the silence, tastefully savoring the word as if it were the most decadent of treats. With each day leading to our next encounter, I felt the festering resentment boil, dwarfed only by the faintest glimmer of righteous defiance within me. I would pave my own way, one way or another. I could see it clearly now, a flicker of hope burning aggressively in my chest, igniting a fire that would consume the betrayals and the shadows they'd cast upon my life. In Cedarwood Falls, the stage was set for a confrontation that had been brewing beneath the surface, a growing storm threatening to break forth, carrying with it promises of resolution, reclamation, and perhaps, at long last, a well-deserved gift of my own. I furiously rifled through the boxes filled with remnants of our parents' lives, a cacophony of emotions tearing through me like a raging storm. Dust floated in the dim light of the attic, catching the fading sunlight that slipped through the small window. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and something slightly mildewed, a smell of loss and forgotten dreams. My fingers shook as I pulled out the first box, labeled financial records. Somehow I had believed that the moment our parents had passed, clarity would emerge, that the inheritance process would be straightforward and just. Yet here I was, knee-deep in boxes, unraveling a puzzle filled with pieces that felt intentionally scattered. With each letter I unfolded, words blurred before my eyes like the tears I didn't let fall. I had imagined our parents as competent stewards of their lives, yet here was evidence of their struggles. Decline, the manila envelope read, marked with a bold, red stamp. Loan not approved. I clenched my teeth. How could my sibling act as though they were deserving of everything? They had portrayed this polished image of a responsible heir, while I now had the proof of their reckless decisions laid out like a personal diary of failures. I tossed it aside like the countless times they had tossed aside my claim, my dignity, and now my inheritance. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered into the silence, directed at the ghosts of my past, but there was no answer. I felt like a detective in an old film noir, uncovering clues in a case that felt impossibly elaborate. Night after night, the shadows of the attic began to blend with my own, the corners of the room morphing into faces of betrayal. I was trapped in an echo chamber of my own despair, echoes of my siblings' mocking laughter rattling inside my head whenever I thought about facing them again. How could they be so arrogant when it was my sacrifice that cushioned their fall? Then came the letter. Not just any letter, but one thick with consequence. The postmark revealed it had come from the lawyer, dated just days before our parents' funeral. A knot wound itself tighter in my stomach as I recognized my sibling's elegant script on the envelope. As I tore it open, my heart pounded in rhythm with my breath. It felt like the quiet before a storm. Inside lay a single page filled with legal jargon that began to dismantle my sanity. Power of attorney. My sibling had leveraged our parents, declining health, and manipulated their trust in ways I could only begin to comprehend. The ink seemed to smirk at me, as if it were a vehicle carrying the weight of their deception. Unbelievable, I muttered, shoving the letter aside. The truth was clearer now, cutting through my confusion like a knife. They had orchestrated a plan, an insidious little dance choreographed to leave me out in the cold. Each document seemed to gloat about their victory while mocking my existence. It was like stepping into a stage of betrayal, where my sibling was the star and I was relegated to the pit of obscurity, a mere spectator in my own family's tragedy. My emotions swirled like a tempest. I could feel frustration boiling over and anger simmering just below the surface. I need to confront them, I whispered hoarsely to the emptiness around me, an echo of my own desperation. But even as I thought it, uncertainty clawed at my mind. What good would it do? They always wore a mask, a facade of poise and elegance, and behind that mask lay the heart of a thief. Hey, how's the treasure hunt going? Came their voice, smooth and dipped in casual condescension, cutting through the silence as I stormed down from my attic hideout to confront them. They lounged on the sofa, all casual indifference, scrolling through their latest shopping haul on a sleek device worth more than my monthly budget. The arrogance bled through in waves, coating the air between us with a thick tension. Needed to breathe deeply. I could not let them get under my skin. You know what you did was wrong, I shot back, trying to keep my voice steady despite the tremor in my fingertips. They chuckled lightly, flipping their hair back with an exaggerated flourish. You really think this is some grand scheme of mine? Our parents made it clear in their will. They were the ones who wanted stability for their golden child. They smirked, winking self-importantly. You're just mad you weren't the favored one. Stability. I scoffed, finally stepping into the room fully, closing the door behind me to block off any chance of retreat. You've used their money, their trust, for your own vanity. I'm not talking about your so-called success. I'm talking about the way you manipulated their choices. I have proof. Proof? Their eyebrows shot upwards, a mixture of amusement and annoyance flickering across their perfect features. What are you going to do? Drown me in rejection letters? Oh, please, Victoria. Life is too short for your relentless bitterness. Bitterness? I echoed, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. You think I'm bitter because you live in luxury? No, I'm bitter because you built a castle on top of their graves. Fine, let's call it what you want. They waved their hand dismissively, rolling their eyes. I don't have time for your melodrama. You should have thought about all this before. You should have cared when they were alive. Their words dripped with derision, fueling the flames within me. Maybe if you hadn't made everything about you, I would have had a chance to care. My fists curled, adrenaline coursed through my veins as my thoughts spiraled. I wanted to shatter their perfect world, not with violence, but with the truth. I unburied their secrets for nights, only to discover how selfish you were. Selfish? You think I'm selfish? They laughed again, but this time it pierced through my anger, morphing it into something sharper. How ironic, coming from the one who chose to hide in the shadows while I took charge. The mention of shadows stung more than expected, as if they had unwrapped the very core of my pain and displayed it like a trophy. I wanted to lash out again, but the dam of anger kept breaking free under this relentless bombardment. Taking charge? I spat. While you took every opportunity to undermine me, you mean? Oh, Victoria, please, came the icy tone of indifference, as if I were losing interest in my own performance. You act as if I owe you an explanation. I don't owe you anything. You've always lived in my shadow and the parents always noticed. Now, finally, I'll get to live for both of us. Live for both of us? I gasped, incredulous. You call this living? What do you think will happen when it all unravels? You cannot keep lying. You cannot keep pretending to be this perfect child. I pointed toward their lush red velvet chaise, the glimmer of their expensive decor gleaming in the background. This life is built on lies? You think they would want seeing you be miserable? Their voice dripped with mocking sarcasm, but underneath lay a hint of fear, fear that perhaps they were wrong. You'll just have to accept that I'm the favorite now. That smirk, the one that made my blood boil, reminded me of everything I had lost and everything I had sacrificed. With every sarcastic remark, they recast the story into one that cast me as the villain. I stood there, suddenly overwhelmed with an avalanche of emotion. The truth will outlast your lies, I said, my voice cracking with determination. I will find a way to claim what is mine. And just like that, their facade cracked, if only for a moment. I could see a flicker of doubt cross their face, an imperceptible crack in their armor. You're being dramatic, Vic. You think digging through dusty boxes in a musty attic somehow gives you leverage? It does, actually. You can't hide behind the wealth forever. The truth will resurface, and when it does, I will be prepared, I declared, my voice setting like cement as I felt the power of those words. Good luck with that, they shot back, yet I noticed an uneasy tension beneath their dismissive words. It wasn't just the fatigue of our argument. There was an anxiety, the reality that a storm was brewing between us, one that might unearth far deeper issues beneath the surface of our inherited conflict. So I turned, ready to retreat from the battlefield, yet my heart had begun to thump a new rhythm of resolve. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me defeated. With one last lingering glance over my shoulder at the shadowy figure who had become a stranger in my life, the sibling who had taken so much, I returned to the attic, determined to unearth the truth. Just wait, sibling, I murmured, searching through the remnants once more. The need to succeed overwhelmed every shadow of doubt. They would see, they would understand. As I excavated the next box, that tiny glimmer of hope nestled deep within me ignited into something fierce. The evidence I wanted to find, the truth as I envisioned it, was not merely buried. It was waiting to be discovered, waiting to be wielded as a weapon of my own making. Their world would turn upside down. I would turn the tide. The air in the house that evening was filled with the scent of roasted chicken and buttery mashed potatoes. The sounds of laughter and mingled conversations created a warm atmosphere, yet I found myself standing on the fringes, a ghost at my own family gathering. I stood near the window, watching the golden glow of the setting sun cast long shadows in the living room, illuminating the faces of those gathered around the table. In stark contrast to the warmth emanating from the room, a cold knot tightened in my stomach as I caught sight of my sibling. They had just returned from an extravagant trip overseas, and the way they flaunted it was like salt in an open wound. "Look at this view from the Eiffel Tower," they exclaimed, holding a photo like it was the Holy Grail. With a broad, self-satisfied smile, they passed it around, eliciting a chorus of oohs and ahs from our relatives. I could feel my pulse quicken, an angry rhythm pounding in my ears. This was not just a photo. It was a proclamation of superiority, an act of self-congratulatory indulgence that the family simply adored. "Victoria, would you like to see the photo?" Someone called from the table, breaking my spiraling thoughts. The invitation felt like a spotlight glaring on me. "It's so beautiful." "No, I'm fine," I forced myself to say, my voice steady despite the tightness in my throat. I could tell they pitied me, unaware of the tumult brewing beneath my calm exterior. I felt like an outcast in my own family, an invisible barricade separating me from their joyous chatter. As the laughter continued, it felt like daggers piercing through the smile on my face while they reveled in their admiration of their achievements. Ignoring the pricking sensation in my heart, I turned my gaze toward the window again. The sun dipped lower, surrendering to the encroaching darkness as if it too wished to escape this uncomfortable scene. Outside, the faint rustle of leaves in the wind remained a distant echo of peace and normalcy. But inside, the cacophony of their admiration rang louder than ever. "How about this? Check out the gifts I brought back." My sibling's voice broke through my thoughts in a brassy cheer as they unveiled a designer handbag, shiny and glamorous, the kind that could easily feed my dreams for years. They held it up and claps erupted around the table as if they had just performed a grand act of magic. With a flourish, they tossed it to the family matriarch, a sparkly-eyed woman who cooed over it like a child with a new toy. "Such quality, you always know how to pick the best gifts," she gushed, her voice high-pitched with excitement. I felt the heat of shame rise to my cheeks. Even the bag of cheap trinkets I had carefully crafted for everyone seemed paltry in comparison to the high-end treasures my sibling paraded like a peacock. I just wanted to scream, to flatten the illusion that my sibling had crafted. Inside, I seethed, feeling the weight of neglect clinging uncomfortably to my shoulders. Had everyone forgotten so quickly about the hard times I faced? The struggles that I had clawed through to reach where I stood now? But here they were, ensnared in a web of false admiration, and there I was, reduced to mere background noise, a background I had strived to escape for so long. "Did you go to Paris too, Victoria?" someone asked, pulling me back from my spiral of sorrow. I recognized the face of a distant cousin, but my response was anything but cheerful. "No, I did not," I said quietly, my voice barely breaking through the echo of laughter. The question felt sharp, a reminder of where I stood in the hierarchy of this family, fraught with silken betrayals. I could feel the heat radiating in my cheeks, every eye probing into the secret life I had tried so hard to mask from view. "Oh, that's right, you've been busy with your job, I suppose?" my sibling said, their tone putting a spotlight on my supposed shortcomings. "Maybe next time, right?" They chuckled a little too heartily, and the laughter rang false, a sound that only fueled the fire of my anger. The room felt suffocating, smoke-filled tent that I desperately wanted to escape. I could feel the stirrings of chaos inside me, the dark thoughts that whispered for me to fight back and reveal the injustice of their indifference, but the thought terrified me. I envisioned standing up and speaking my truth boldly, calling them out on their narcissism. Yet the image of their smug, shocked faces only made my heart race for the wrong reasons. With every passing moment, the knot in my stomach tightened, and I turned away from that chaotic assembly, retreating to the quiet corner of the living room that became my fortress of solitude. I stared at the beige walls adorned with family portraits, snapshots of laughter and love, and I felt an overwhelming burden beneath the smiles. It was as if I was forgotten in an avalanche of bright memories, buried in layers of indifference. They focused on the stories of my siblings' adventures while I faded further into the background. "Can you believe they went to the Louvre? Just amazing." I overheard the excited chatter continuing to spin like a tornado around me. I clenched my fists, feeling the heat of hatred rise to my sibling, to their confident knack for attracting admiration, and to the family that stood so willing to applaud their success while overlooking my silent struggles. As the evening wore on, I found myself moving through the house with robotic precision, clearing away plates and napkins in an effort to keep busy, to keep from exploding. I could hear snippets of conversation, the continued recount of stories laced with laughter, but I felt detached, like a spectator at a play meant for happier people. My sibling continued to bask in their spotlight, and my heart ached. "Victoria, come join us?" Someone called again, this time a voice filled with the kind of concern that stung. They clearly did not see the storm brewing within me, the desire to shout out the secrets hidden beneath the surface of our so-called family connections. But I couldn't, could I? So much unsaid, so much lingering resentment that wrapped itself tighter around me with every disclosure of a fabulous journey they'd taken, every shiny gift they paraded. My heart pounded with righteous energy, seeking an escape, to finally muster the courage to reveal the truth about my siblings' indifference to my plight. I could feel the heat rising, an inferno stoked by their gleeful self-importance, and within that emotional cyclone, a whisper dared me to hold my ground. I assessed the faces of family who laughed without regard for my burdens, all while my sibling basked in their fabricated warmth, hidden behind layers of false charm. What they celebrated was not simply an extravagant trip. It had unraveled into a tapestry of betrayal woven into our shared history. The animals in the wild do not simply lie down when threatened, they fight for their right to exist. I could be like them, could rise up to reclaim my space and demand recognition. How long had I stayed silenced, watching the world favor my sibling while I spiraled in silence? No more. As I lingered near the kitchen, far enough that their laughter faded into distant echoes, I took a deep breath, forming a plan in my mind. This was no longer about passive resolution. It was about projection, about revealing the reality they perpetuated so carelessly. Here was my moment, a moment where I could take back what I believed was rightfully mine. I was ready to confront them, and when faced with their justified pride, I would bear my truths, painfully stitched together through years of unacknowledged struggle. I envisioned standing before them, each word poised like a dagger, aimed to unleash the pent-up feelings that festered between us like an invisible malignancy. They would hear my pain, the silence that echoed in all these gatherings, and once the truth escaped my lips, there would be no turning back. In that moment, as laughter echoed behind me, I realized that rage no longer felt like a choice. It felt like a necessity. The darkness within me morphed into a flicker of determination, illuminating a path toward my revenge. I would expose their indifference piece by piece until the facade they crafted fell apart, revealing their selfishness and forcing them to face the chaos they had ignited within me. Finally, the storm inside my heart quieted and I focused on my resolve. I was Victoria Bennett, not just a silent observer. I was a sister driven by a quest for justice. And with that realization, the knot in my stomach loosened its grip, releasing the final ties that imprisoned me in my own misery. Tonight would not simply change our family dynamics. It would change everything as I stood in the living room of our childhood home. The pungent scent of pine and wood polish enveloped me, a bizarre comfort in the storm brewing within my chest. The room was resplendent with memories, like snapshots caught in a slow motion reel. I watched as my family gathered, drawn in by my invitation masked as a peace offering. The soft clinking of silverware against plates echoed against the walls adorned with family photos, each one a fragment of history I had spent years being overshadowed by. The table, set for a simple meal, seemed so ordinary, yet I was aware of the extraordinary subterfuge I had concocted to ensure my sibling faced the consequences they so richly deserved. I took a deep breath, tasting the familiar hint of cinnamon lingering in the air, a reminder of holidays gone by. The uncomfortable chatter filled the space, a false sense of normalcy, and yet I felt a tight coil of tension around my heart, my plan ready to burst forth like a dam releasing its waters. I had meticulously laid out every detail while they chuckled and reminisced, blissfully unaware of the storm nudging at the edges of my mind. Each laugh felt like a knife twisting deeper, a reminder of the years spent waiting. Can you believe how long it's been since we all got together? I attempted to break the brittle tension with a smile, my voice steadier than I felt. I just thought it was about time to mend some frayed bonds, as they say. They responded with nods, their faces marred by the comfort of ignorance. I could see my sibling laughing too heartily, still riding the crest of the facade they had so carefully crafted. It was infuriating. I wanted to shake them and scream that their deceit was far more than a simple family squabble. But I swallowed my anger and the resentment that simmered just beneath the surface. This was not the time to lose control. It was my moment to shine the harsh light of truth. With everyone finally settled, the clinking of utensils grew quiet, replaced by an expectant stillness. I reached for the envelope I had placed on the table, my fingers trembling just slightly as I slid it toward the center, drawing their attention to it. A murmur floated among the family, and I could feel their eyes pinned on me, curious about what I might present. With slow intention, I unsheathed the contents, a collection of financial documents, vivid messages, and damning photographs that bore witness to the betrayal I had endured. You see, I began, my voice unwavering, this trip down memory lane also comes with a dose of honesty, one that I believe we owe each other. A hand tremored slightly as I pointed at the document sprawled out like a deck of cards laid bare before an audience. All of this, I paused, letting the weight of my words settle in, this belongs not just to one of us, but to both. What do you mean? My sibling interjected, a hint of panic in their voice, eyes darting from family member to family member, sensing the shift in mood. It means, I pressed on, the resolve cracking like thunder in my chest, that the inheritance our parents left is a matter that concerns both of us, not just you. I gestured to the first document boldly. I have proof of everything: emails, records detailing expenses, financial statements where the shared inheritance was quietly redirected into your account, leaving me with nothing but barely enough to scrape by. Gasps echoed around the room, punctuated by the staccato of forks clattering against plates. The air thickened with disbelief, their eyes widening as the truth seeped into their consciousness like ink spreading through water. What? One relative whispered, the shock visibly eliciting reactions across their faces, some drawn into shocked silence, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Look at this, I urged, thrusting a picture into the air that captured the evidence of lavish vacations and extravagant purchases, my sibling flaunting their newfound wealth, whisked away into an opulent lifestyle built on the foundation of my sacrifices. Every dollar you spent was on the back of my struggles. Every trip, every item you flaunted so proudly, it came from what was meant for both of us. Where did you even get that? My siblings spat, anger flashing in their eyes, turning to the family with a desperate plea. This isn't true, you can't believe this. Can't believe what? The truth? I shot back, my heart hammering with each word. Every ounce of fear I had dissolved, replaced by a fierce determination that coursed through my body. You've been living a lie, and it's time everyone knew. Our parents entrusted us to look out for each other, and instead, you've taken everything. The atmosphere shifted dramatically, a cacophony of emotions clashing and colliding around us. Typical walls surrounding our family began to crumble like the dry, brittle popcorn scattered by careless children. My cousin sat on the edge of her chair, her mouth slightly agape, while my other relatives exchanged wary glances. The reality sank in deeper than I had anticipated, each face reflecting a mixture of disbelief, confusion, and most importantly, realization. I don't even know what you're talking about, my sibling cried, grasping for a lifeline in the swelling tide of accusations. This is ridiculous. You've always been jealous of me. Jealous, I repeated, tasting the words slowly like vinegar on my tongue. Jealous of what? Of the freedom you took with the money that was supposed to be split. Look at me. I'm the one struggling to keep my head above water, to make ends meet. You've bolstered yourself with laziness and deception, while I was left floundering. A cacophony of voices erupted, relatives murmuring amongst themselves, casting judgmental glares that turned my siblings' previously confident facade into flailing desperation. Desperation brought forth by the very family they had deceived for so long. I could practically see the walls of their certainty beginning to crack. Their steadiness faltered, they were losing their foothold. It filled me with a sense of giddy triumph. I worked 3 jobs, I continued, passion fueling my words, doing everything necessary while you collected riches for yourself. Those messages from our parents I have in the stack, they declared it was meant for us to share. But you robbed me blind while pretending to be the loving sibling? I can't stand for this, my sibling said, voice wavering as they looked around, scanning the room for allies. No one moved, no one fluttered to their side. My heart squeezed with an odd mixture of pity and vindication. The look on my sibling's face shifted from anger to dawning realization, a sudden understanding overshadowing their confusion. They were trapped in their own web. I savored each reaction, each bolt of awareness flitting across the faces of my family members. You may not have known this, I said, gesturing to the documents that now lay like a trophy on the table, but you can no longer run from the implications of your actions. The life you crafted upon my back comes crumbling down. Your lifestyle, your choices, every single one came at a heavy price. The silence that followed felt electric. I can still hear the heavy breathing, the rustling of clothes against skin, the almost imperceptible shuffling of feet as they absorbed the ugly truth refracted through the fragile glass of lies. Each gasp of shock wasn't just about the evidence. It was the frail foundation of what they thought to be their family, fractured and splintered, unsteady in the light of my revelations. Do you remember how I always supported you? I leaned closer, letting the intensity of my gaze pierce through them. How I always offered you my hand when you faced challenges? You took advantage of that. I simply wanted to show you how betrayal feels, to expose the wounds so carelessly inflicted. The color had drained from my sibling's face. I had long imagined this moment, the very breathing of the truth bursting forth like a dam ready to overflow, and now that it was here, it was far more exquisite than I had ever envisioned. The tears pooled in their eyes, and for once, they wavered under the weight of their deceit. It was a poetic justice. One of our relatives finally broke the silence, shaking their head as if trying to clear the fog of disbelief. This can't be true, right? Their wavering voice held an ounce of uncertainty, just enough to give momentum to the tide I had crafted against my sibling. Their eye contact flickered between me and my sibling, uncertain as the pieces started to fit together in their minds. The world you've built is on a shaky foundation. It's time you own up to it, I said, my voice steady, but my heart raced. I didn't want to stop pouring it all out, not until everyone in the room saw clearly through the fog of manipulation and lies. I beckoned to my sibling louder. When will you finally face the music and admit to everyone the betrayal you've drawn upon us? Don't do this. Their voice cracked, tears caught in the corners of their eyes, revealing the child they had hidden behind the mask of adulthood for far too long. But there was no turning back. Everyone was watching now. I'm not doing anything. You did this. You turned our family against one another for your gain, and now the entire truth is laid bare before us all. No longer would I stand silently. No longer would I allow my struggles to define my worth. I stood in the dim light of the living room, its familiar couches and worn rugs now feeling foreign, almost suffocating. My sibling paced, the worn floorboards creaking beneath their heavy steps, echoing the tension thick in the air. This was not how I imagined confrontation would feel. This was not the moment of triumph I had envisioned, yet here I was at the center of my own vindication. The weight of my exposé still hung like a heavy cloak around my shoulders, reminding me of the courage it took to finally step into the light. That afternoon, I had uncovered the truth, revealing years of deceit, and now my sibling was unraveling before me. Victoria, it's not what you think, they said, their voice shaky, betraying all the confidence they once projected. The panic glittered in their eyes, a bright tell against their carefully crafted facade. I didn't mean for it to get this far, it was just business. Business? I repeated, biting back a mixture of disbelief and laughter. Is that what you call taking what rightfully belongs to me? Disregarding our family ethics for a paycheck? They stopped pacing and faced me, disbelief painted across their features. You should be grateful I was managing everything. You don't understand the kind of pressure I was under. Pressure? My heart raced with indignation, fueling my voice as I stepped closer, the flash of anger making my skin burn. You were never pressured, you were greedy. You turned our family's trust into a financial ladder to climb for yourself, leaving me beneath your boot. Don't you dare try to spin this into something it isn't. Victoria, they pleaded, their tones softening as if appealing to emotions that had long been suppressed. You're being too harsh. I am still your family. In that moment, I felt exhilaration coursing through my veins, tangling with the pain of past betrayals, feeding off it as it coalesced into power. Family? You do not get to hide behind that word while you stab me in the back. I have spent years watching you siphon off our inheritance. While I was struggling to carve out my own space in this world, you were stashing away my rightful share in your twisted Game of Thrones. The silence that followed felt thick and stifling, almost palpable. I could see them wrestling with the truth, that familiar look of doubt creeping into their eyes. I thought you wouldn't need it, they muttered, almost inaudibly. You thought wrong, I snapped, taking a step forward as my voice gathered steam, relief washing over me. After all this time, I didn't need to be saved. I needed to be supported, believed in, but you traded my worth for loyalty to your greed. The sting of betrayal ignited as memories flooded back. Smiles at family dinners that masked hidden agendas, whispered jokes that belittled my struggles, always just out of reach, always overshadowed. No one else will side with you, they said, desperation creeping under their bravado. In the end, they trust me. I am the eldest, Victoria. You're disrupting everything we've worked for. It felt surreal to finally see them cornered, stripped of their bravado. This isn't just about our inheritance anymore. It's about the years you've made me feel less than. I have dealt with your opportunism long enough. Their loyalty is mine now because finally I found my voice. The satisfaction of finally being seen echoed in me. I would no longer stand in silence. Why did you do it? I asked, my voice lowering. Were you afraid I would succeed, that you would be left behind? Was it the jealousy that drove you to stab me in the back? I was just trying to protect my own, they admitted, their voice trembling. I've always been the one who took care of everything. I've done this for us, for our family. You don't know what it's like to shoulder all that responsibility. And I don't want to know, because your version of responsibility only means trampling on others to maintain your grip. You think I cannot stand on my own? You have no idea the strength I possess. The growing anger simmered just below the surface. My family had rallied behind me like a shield, stronger than I had given them credit for, and the weight of their support felt like an armory. The cousins, the aunts, and even some long-lost relatives had all stood by, replicating the truth I'd uncovered. What do you want from me? My sibling responded, their voice low and shaking, crushed now, mere remnants of their earlier conviction flashing like remnants of ashes in the wind. I want what is rightfully mine, I declared, my words steady now as clarity filled the space between us. My share of the inheritance, $75,000 or whatever your fancy, deceitful accounting claims, belongs to me. I want it settled, and I want you to acknowledge what you did was wrong. But they faltered, uncertainty splashing across their face. You can't manipulate me anymore, I said, my heart racing as I sensed their backbone crumbling. It won't work this time. I know what our family thinks, what they believe, and you should too. They see through your ruse. You may have kicked me down for years, but no more. Nothing could erase the feeling of empowerment that filled my chest as I recalled the moment our family came together, echoing strength and solidarity as they reached out to me, their endorsement like sunlight breaking through heavy rain. They had all stood with me, confronted my sibling with a single sentiment: your time is over. There was a flicker in their eyes, the realization of their power slipping through their fingers, leaving mere shadow in its wake. Victoria, please? They tried again, less assertive now, a hint of desperation curling their voice. Let's fix this together, we're still family. I took a deep breath, feeling the walls of my resolve hardening further. Family means trust and honesty, not cruelty for the sake of gain. You can't play that hand anymore. The court has ruled in public and in family. You lose. Way their shoulders sagged told me everything I needed to know. You won't move past this, will you? They whispered, their tone almost defeated. I shook my head, my voice colder. No, and neither will you, not after everything. But for once in my life, I'm standing up for myself. I'm not staying quiet while you siphon what is mine just because you think you deserve it more. Fine, they spat, the shame stirring into anger again, but this time it felt more fragile, desperate. I will not let you ruin me. I have power too, I have connections. Power? I challenged, narrowing my gaze. That power is dwindling, you know it and I know it. You're backed into a corner now, your words mean nothing, you have no control over me. Yes, yes, we'll see about that, they stammered, yet the tremor in their voice gave away the unreliability of their bravado. They stepped back, all bravado melting like wax in the heat. Suddenly it became painfully quiet, the tension swirling unbroken like an unshakable storm. You'd think it was buried, I said softly, as calm seeped into my soul. But it's not, the truth has emerged. We stood there, just inches apart, both breathing heavily in the aftermath of this emotional confrontation. I could hardly breathe, adrenaline coursing through me, the anticipation sparkling in the air. I could feel it. This was my moment. Fine, they uttered, finally acquiescing with a heavy sigh. You have cleared out the family heir. Your $75,000 is yours. Just know, Victoria, that I'll never see you the same way again. This will haunt you. Haunt me? I bit down hard on my lip to hide a smile, a swell of joy bubbling inside me. You don't understand, do you? This was more than financial victory. I stepped closer, the thrill overwhelming me as I stared deep into their eyes. This was a reclamation of my dignity, my self-worth. I am more than your shadow, and I will never look back. You should be haunted. The betrayal was yours. I just revealed it. With the truth laid bare and no more strength behind their defiance, I turned and walked away, leaving their hollowed breaths behind me, echoes of their downfall bouncing off the walls, reminding us both that justice is stronger than the bonds forged in betrayal.